Ever since waking up, I kept getting that weird feeling of deja vu. Was it really October again already? Halloween couldn't just be a couple weeks away again, could it? The drunken parties, the ridiculous costumes, the goofy games and silly, spoopy stories. Trick-or-treaters and their parents taking up the streets and ringing every doorbell they could find. Cobwebs and cardboard witches, paper skeletons and poorly carved pumpkins. Little overpriced packages of candy, chocolate, and chips. I felt like I'd been through it 1,000 times already, and I was only 19. But at least a Halloween party was better than sitting in the university dorms alone, bored stupid. My costume still fit me from the year prior. A simple, black, long-sleeve shirt and pants with a white skeleton painted on the front. I'd found it at a thrift store a few years back, and had worn it every year since. After putting on my outfit, I heard a knock at the door. I knew who it would be even before I opened it. As expected, it was Rob standing there in the dorm's hallway, looking ridiculous in his red and black devil face paint. He was holding a pitchfork in one hand and a half case of beer in the other, wearing a black cape and pants with a crimson red button-up shirt. A pair of horns were attached to his head, and a shiny black tail with a triangle at the end of it, constructed entirely of duct tape, hung from his ass. "You ready?" he asked, dancing from foot to foot like a kid on his way to a theme park. Unlike me, Rob loved Halloween. Yeah, just let me grab my booze. I had already filled up the little silver flask with rum, but took a quick swig of it and topped it off again from the bottle. The taste was nasty, and I felt the burn in my throat instantly, grimacing. Beer tasted better, but I wasn't going to lug around a 12-pack like Rob was planning on doing all night. No thanks. Closing the door and locking it behind me, we left my dorm room to head off to the first party of the night. It was located at a house off campus and would be a little bit of a walk, but that was alright. The night was young, and it was Halloween. Despite myself, I felt like I was starting to get into the spirit of things again. Students were walking up and down the dormitory halls wearing costumes of all shapes and sizes. Inflatable extraterrestrials, creepy grim reapers, sexy witches and cheerleaders, and various other sexy occupations. Those were always popular. I was reminded once again, as we walked past 100 different young women, that I was still single, despite 2 months in the dorms and everyone else I knew hooking up together. It was like high school all over again, just with less parental supervision. The way out of the dorms was crowded, as everybody seemed to be leaving to go to parties or other events. Some people hadn't bothered to put on a costume, and others, like me, were half-assing it. I saw lots of people with cheap-looking plastic masks in their hands, or wearing brown bathrobes and carrying fake lightsabers. One guy had gone all out, doing a full Darth Maul face paint job on himself. He even had the double-sided lightsaber to match. Eventually, we got outside. The air was crisp and cool. A beautiful autumn night, with the smell of fallen leaves hanging in the air. We gradually separated from the crowd and made our way over the busy street towards the neighborhood across from the college. The sound of squealing tires caught my attention, and I stopped at the last second, just barely avoiding catastrophic injury. "Hey, watch it!" Rob yelled, as a car turned the corner fast in front of us, making an illegal turn and almost hitting us as we crossed the street. Someone screamed a slurred obscenity at us from the back of the car, and threw a crumpled beer can in our direction. It spilled its contents all over me, soaking the front of my shirt in lukewarm liquid that stank of barley and backwash. "What a bunch of dicks," Rob muttered as we walked across to the other side. I suddenly had that feeling of deja vu once again. It was so much stronger this time, though. Like, the memory of what had just happened was in my mind already, latent and hidden, and I had simply awoken it by experiencing that predetermined event. Whoa, I said, grabbing Rob's arm for balance and feeling woozy for a moment. You alright? Yeah, it's just. Do you ever get deja vu? I've been getting it all day, and it's really hitting me right now. It feels like we did all this before. Does that make any sense? Totally. I get that all the time. Like I had a dream of something, but forgot about it until it happened in real life. Rob said, trying to reassure me. It happened to me when I was like 12. I swear, I had a dream of mowing this old broad's lawn. And then the next day, I show up at a house to mow lawn. And it's the same fucking place from my dream. I swear on my life. I heard it's just some weird misfire in your brain, though. Like, they did MRIs on people and stuff to figure it out. I think they said it's caused by stress or lack of sleep, usually. Or a brain tumor. Right, I said, trying to ignore that last option. Probably just tired. We started walking again, and as we entered the neighborhood, I saw something odd. All of the pumpkins, which would normally be on people's front steps, were instead at the curb, as if they'd been left out early for trash collection. When we got closer, I started to see why. The pumpkins were all rotten, sagging, and decayed. Their carved faces looked sad, sagging and drooping, despite the fact that it was still early in the season. Usually you saw those sorts of nasty, rotted pumpkins being left out for the garbage man a week or two later, in mid-November. But every single house had the same phenomena. A sagging, droopy, decayed jack-o'-lantern left out by the curb. As if they were diseased, and people didn't want them near their homes. What's the deal with the pumpkins? Rob asked, crouching down and looking at one up close, wrinkling his nose in distaste. Careful! I nearly screamed, surprising even myself. I covered my mouth, unsure why that had slipped out. A sense of dread was looming over me. Careful? Why? It's just a pumpkin. He started poking at it, and that was when I saw the bugs crawling around in the puddle of orange goo near the base of it. They looked like pill bugs, only larger, and instead of gray, they were black, yellow, white, and orange, the colors of Halloween. What are those things? Rob saw them all around his feet and backed up a bit, much to my relief. But then, seeing how afraid I was, he picked up one of the bugs by its midsection and held it up in the air, inspecting it. Candy corn, he said, bringing the squirming bug closer to his opening mouth. I knew he wouldn't actually eat it, but then he kept bringing it closer and closer until it was past his teeth, its tiny legs kicking wildly, the bug nearly sitting on his tongue. Stop, man, that's disgusting. He started to laugh, but then began coughing, as the bug sprayed some brownish-looking fluid into his mouth. Looking with revulsion at the weird bug in his hand, he threw it away, spitting out brownish-black, tar-stained saliva. Ugh, frickin' bug just took a dump in my mouth, Rob was shouting, opening up a beer to try and wash the taste out. That's what you get, you sick bastard, I laughed uneasily. I wonder if it's some, new invasive species, like those Japanese stink beetles. Strangely, he didn't answer, just chugged his beer and then stood staring at me, looking zoned out. Either way, it's nasty. Come on, let's go. We started walking again, heading in the direction of the party. It was only a few blocks away, so it wouldn't take long to get there. Rob was already acting drunk, and I rolled my eyes a bit, thinking he was pretending. I didn't understand why he would do that, but he definitely hadn't had enough to drink to warrant his tipsy, off-kilter gait. I just figured he was being his typical self. A lovable but frustrating buffoon. Finally, we arrived at the place. Seeing the porch crowded with people and overflowing onto the front lawn, we made our way into the small house, which was packed like a phone booth during Frosh Week. No wonder people were flocking outside. It was hot as hell in here. Immediately, we were greeted by flashing strobe lights, loud music, and a crush of random strangers. I didn't recognize anybody, and felt increasingly uncomfortable as we found our way through the horde of sweaty, drunken students. A crowd of people were dancing to some loud, terrible techno music. A few others were in the process of draining a large steel beer keg, alternating between methods, and seemingly trying to find the fastest possible way to get blackout drunk. Eventually, we spotted our friends Hank and Lindsay sitting in a back room playing video games. This was more our speed, as opposed to the keg stands and Jaeger shots happening in the living room. So we stuck around with them, and watched as they played Mario Kart, rather than enduring the trials and tribulations of meeting new people. "What took you numbnuts so long?" Hank asked, twisting the controller in his hand and breaking his character into a well-executed power slide. He was wearing a Hunter S. Thompson costume, complete with a straw cigarette, tan brimmed hat, and aviator sunglasses. He even had a briefcase full of illicit substances sitting open beside him on the bed, like a free buffet. His game character fell off a ledge into darkness, and he threw the controller to the floor in frustration. "Damn it, we can't stop here. This is Bat Country," he yelled in his best HST impression. Then, in his regular voice, complained, "Ghost House is literally the worst level. How did I let you talk me into this?" Lindsay just laughed and kept driving, ignoring the fact that he'd quit. "Hey guys, check out my briefcase. Straight out of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas," Hank said, showing off the aforementioned suitcase, which matched his elaborate costume, completing the effect. He showed off the white leather satchel, pointing out an array of plastic baggies filled with various substances of questionable legality. Rob was very quiet during all this, and I turned around to see him just sitting there, looking queasy and spaced out. His eyes appeared glazed over, and yet he hadn't even touched his other beers. "Hey, you okay, man?" I asked him, feeling worried. He didn't look like himself. Rob's red-rimmed eye snapped over to look at me, and he nodded. But despite that, I could tell he wasn't okay. He wasn't really looking at me, I realized, but through me. "Good," he droned. I studied his face for a moment. In the incandescent lights of the room, his skin looked a little yellow-orange suddenly, like an Oompa Loompa suffering from liver failure. He really must have been pre-drinking, I thought. "Somebody watch this guy," I asked my other friends. "I'm gonna go see if there's something to eat out there. Anybody want anything?" Lindsay had lit up a joint and was passing it around the room. "Grab some more of that pumpkin pie. That shit's amazing." There were plates all around the room with the residue of the pies left on them. Crumbs and bits of brownish orange filling. Just looking at those plates made my heart sink, and gave me that strange feeling of deja vu and false memories once more. But I quickly shrugged it off again. I couldn't help but wonder if the pies were from the same place everybody was buying those tainted jack-o'-lanterns from. Taking one last worried look at Rob, I opened the door and left the room to head back into the noisy party area. I saw someone I recognized, finally. "Hey, where you been hiding?" Becky, the host of the party, asked, shouting over the music when I saw her in the kitchen. She was in all of my classes and had been nice enough to invite me. We'd always been friendly, but now she was giving me a flirtatious look that said that maybe she wanted to be more than just friendly. "In the back room with Rob, Lindsay, and Hank," I shouted back, trying to be heard over the loud music. "I like your costume." The second I began to say that second part, the music abruptly stopped as somebody switched songs. Everyone in the kitchen turned to look at me, and I heard a few snickers. I could feel my face turning red, getting hotter and hotter as I stood there. You could hear a pin drop. Becky smiled, and I could see her blushing too. "You have anything to eat around here?" I asked, trying to change the subject as the music started up again. "Been hanging out with Lindsay, huh? Got the munchies?" she joked, gently shoving me. "Got a ton of pumpkin pie. That's about it. Len brought him. His dad owns the farm with the pumpkin patch. He said they didn't sell very well this year for some reason." The pie tins were scattered everywhere. Dozens of them. All mostly eaten. I looked around the room and saw paper plates with pie crumbs on them, dirty forks hanging off the sides. That rising sense of doom and dread began to bloom inside me again, for reasons I couldn't explain. The bugs. What? There were these weird bugs in the pumpkins, all up and down the street, and the ones out front of your house, too. And the pumpkins were all rotten. I felt like I was describing a dream I'd had to her. Or maybe a nightmare. "Oh, yeah, they went off really early this year. I saw a few weird-looking maggots in them, so I threw them to the curb. I'm just glad nobody smashed them. Probably because no one wants to go near them. They're a pestilence. A plague." My thoughts were racing a mile a minute. Flashes of false memories and things which hadn't happened yet. But they would. Oh, God. Everything was happening, just like in my dream. What was happening to me? "Are you okay?" Becky asked, looking worried. "You look like you've seen a ghost." No, not a ghost. Something worse than that, I thought. I've seen the Great Pumpkin. I look back at the pies on the table again. They appeared different than before. They were moving. Was I dreaming? Was this a nightmare? No. As much as I wished that were true, I knew that it was not. My dream was coming back to me more clearly by the second, like a movie that I had not watched but lived through. Orange and black maggots were squirming and crawling from the pie tins, and were now all over the counter in droves. I pointed them out to Becky, and she blinked a few times before really seeing them. Finally, she did. And she screamed, beginning to remember. Grabbing her hand, I pulled her out to the living room. The flashing strobe lights revealed a terrifying scene. People were changing. Their skin had turned yellow-orange, and their faces were swelling up like warty pumpkins. Giant red blisters and boils were blooming on their faces and necks, as their reddened eyes stared ahead, with no recognition of what was happening all around. All of the party guests looked like edematous, pumpkin-headed zombies, as they danced and drank their beer slowly, without noticing what was happening all around them. Orange fluid seeped from their pores, leaking from their swelling extremities. The weird, colorful pill bugs were all over the tables, on the floors, walls, and ceiling, and they were crawling on the guests as they shoveled more and more of them into their mouths, laughing and crunching the bugs between their teeth like popcorn. "What the hell is happening to everybody?" Becky nearly screamed. Everyone stopped and turned to look at us in unison. I pulled Becky into the bathroom, trying to get away from everyone else before they turned on us. I had a feeling we weren't safe here. "Did you eat any of the pumpkin pie? Or touch any of the pumpkins?" She shook her head, no. "Listen, this is gonna sound crazy, but I've been getting deja vu all day, and I'm starting to think it's not a coincidence. think I've lived through this before. Maybe we've all lived through this before. Going through the same day over and over again. Like Groundhog Day. That's why the pumpkins look so old. And why I'm seeing things that haven't happened yet. She nodded, looking deep in thought. Yeah, that makes sense. I've been getting those weird deja vu moments all day too. That's why I was looking for you. Something told me you'd know what to do. I think we need to go to the pumpkin patch, I said, not understanding why I was saying it, only knowing that I had to. Yeah, there's something wrong at the pumpkin patch, and I think we might be able to fix it before it's too late. Another version of us figured this out. Some other time before this. Now we just have to follow through and finish it once and for all. Her eyes grew wide, and I saw that she remembered. We had been there before. Together. We had done all of this before. That's why it felt like I knew her so well. We had spent countless hours together. The problem was, all I could see were flashes of memory that I had been forced to forget. I had always loved movies like Groundhog Day and Happy Death Day. How ironic that now I was stuck in one. And it was a lot less fun in reality. What about Lindsay and Hank? And Rob? Oh no. What about Rob? I ran with her to the back room and saw that it was already too late. Rob had been affected the most, it seemed. His face had swollen like a balloon, and he was already changing into one of them. The blisters and boils had formed on his neck, face, and hands. They were bursting, and the horn points of insectile legs were beginning to emerge from where his bloodied flesh had burst open. He stood up, vacant-eyed and staring, then began stalking toward us as more joints of thin, long, black legs appeared, emerging from bloody holes in his face and neck. Lindsay and Hank stood up as well, their stretching, papery skin yellow-orange, and their eyes glazed over, their necks and faces bulging and covered in warts. My friends' voices were no longer human, but sounded insectile, as they buzzed and clicked and made strange, high-pitched noises to communicate with each other. Becky and I turned and ran in the opposite direction, too terrified to scream. The sounds were coming from everywhere now, as the changes seemed to be happening all around us. A guy with a swollen orange head wearing a Super Mario costume tried to punch me in the face with a white glove fist, just barely missing as I dodged out of the way. Guests wearing vampire capes with sharp teeth came at us. Zombies, mummies, and monsters of all shapes and sizes, covered with the growing warts, bugs, and blisters that looked red and angry. They stopped us in our tracks just as we were about to escape, looming over us, moaning and drooling as they surrounded us. I pushed a few of them out of the way, sending them reeling into the others. We dodged and evaded them as best as we could, grateful that they were slow and stumbling after having just turned. Luckily, we managed to push them out of the way just before being overwhelmed by the sheer number of them. I pulled open the front door and got out onto the road when someone called at us from the street. It was Len. I remembered flashes and bits of memories of him helping us. He was the guy whose parents owned the pumpkin patch. He whistled at us and waved us over to his truck. "Please tell me I'm going crazy," he said as we got closer. "I could have sworn we'd done this before." He was wearing ripped, faded blue jeans and a plaid shirt, his long, blonde hair unwashed and dirty. He had bags beneath his eyes, which revealed a long lack of sleep. "You're not crazy," I told him. "Do you have any idea what the hell we're supposed to do? Because all I know is we gotta get to your place, to where all this started." "That's fine by me. Something tells me we can't stay here and talk about it, though," he said, pointing toward the front door where party guests with bulging features were stumbling out, lumbering toward us covered in blooming warts and crawling bugs. "Get in," he said, hopping into the driver's seat. We got into the truck, cramming into the cab together and slamming the door shut, just as several partygoers got close. I locked my door just as they started pulling on the handle, trying to get in. Their orange-tinted eyes glared into mine as they groaned and wailed and slapped their bloody palms angrily against the glass. "Go, go, go! Let's get out of here!" I yelled, grateful when he hit the gas and fled the scene. The farm was a few miles away, so we tried to use the time while driving to our advantage. I thought hard about the memories, trying to grab hold of them, but they were slippery as fish, each time evading my grasp. Len pulled into the long gravel driveway of his property, the truck fishtailing and swerving. I thought I heard something moving in the back of the vehicle, but when I looked over my shoulder, there was nothing there. An eerie orange glow could be seen from the pumpkin patch as we drove toward the farmhouse. "I think I finally remember what I'm supposed to do," Len said, his eyes looking far off and thoughtful. "We gotta blow up a pumpkin." He slammed his foot down hard on the brakes and told us to head out into the field, that he would meet us there in a minute. He had to grab something first. We followed Len's instructions and ran out into the pumpkin patch. I heard the crunch of 1,000 bugs splattering beneath my feet as we ran through the field of rotten gourds. Our destination was obvious: the massive, glowing pumpkin in the middle of the field. Standing in front of the otherworldly glow of it, I heard movement from the shadows. Looking around, I couldn't spot the source. Then Len came running through the field toward us, holding something in his hand. As he got closer, I saw what it was. A grenade. "My dad's a war buff," he explained. "I got a bunch of undetonated live explosives off the internet. I never understood why he wanted this old crap, especially when it can kill you. But here it is. Something's telling me we need to destroy that giant pumpkin. That's where all this shit..." Suddenly, he stopped dead in his tracks as something skewered him from behind. The point of a long, black talon appeared, sticking out of his abdomen, then suddenly withdrew. Len collapsed to the ground, still and unmoving. Standing behind him was what remained of my friend, Rob. His face a bloated mask of its old self. Huge, insectile legs propelled him forward, his body hanging limply below. Eyes that were orange and malevolent stared back at me as he approached with lightning speed. With his last dying breath, Len pulled the pin and tossed me the grenade. Not Rob's eyes grew wide, and he raced toward me, outpaced by the thrown grenade. I caught it, then turned and ran, stumbling backwards, falling clumsily into the rotten orange flesh of the behemoth pumpkin. Then, somehow, going through its exterior walls as if it were just a hologram, I landed inside the great orange glowing pumpkin. A multitude of instrument panels, high-tech displays, interstellar maps, and other machinery surrounded me. Levers and dials and video display monitors, all of which looked light years beyond any technology on Earth. And at the center of it all was a cylindrical tube containing a bright white light resembling an infinity sign, moving like liquid inside its vial. It reminded me a bit of the flux capacitor in Back to the Future, only it was larger and glowed brighter, white like the sun. I had a moment to think to myself, it's aliens. We're being invaded by aliens. And then, the realization hit me of what had been happening. just like it had 100 times before. Or 1,000. The grenade felt warm in my hand, and it bloomed into a blinding flash in slow motion before my eyes. A low-pitched, deafening explosion rang slowly in my ears as time slowed to a crawl, the world turning white and then black. And all was silent as a dream. I woke up with the worst hangover. My mouth tasted like rum, although I couldn't recall having drank any. The bottle was still full and unopened on my dresser. Rob would be here any minute. I figured I'd fill up the flask and put on my costume while I waited for him. Naps only made me more tired anyway, and they always left me feeling strange, like I was half asleep, half awake, dreaming with my eyes open. All day long, I'd been getting deja vu. Was it really Halloween again already? Because it felt like it was only yesterday.
Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. If you'd like another way to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/Jordan Group Horror. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward, and if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow. And see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night.